Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com. We are talking transformation and possibilities here on Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. I have Patty Henry with me. Patty is a psychotherapist and the author of 2 lifetimes, From Fear to Love. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you for your show, for the work that you are doing to be a healing force in this world.
Thank you, Patty. I'm a little curious, though. What is a psychotherapist doing on exploring the mystical side of life?
You know, I've been in private practice for 32 years now, and people come with all kinds of wounds and definitely looking for answers. And I tell people, you are divinely made. You're supposed to be here right now, this point in time, in this body, in this gender, in this skin color, in this country. You're here on purpose, and that you have some reason to be here.
Patty, what is this journey we're all on, and how do we get so messed up on it?
The name of my book is 2 Lifetimes. The first lifetime, people live in fear. And the second lifetime, people are able to live in love and joy and the good stuff. And so I believe our mission on the planet is to move from one side to the other, to where you have your authentic power and you're not run by fear.
Patty, how do people get stuck in that fear mode and end up walking their whole lifetime on that path of fear?
I think that we get our fear when we're growing up. We're born perfect, and this perfect little child gets thrown into a family. They have parents, they have siblings, they have teachers and coaches and friends parents. And in that first part of life, that's when we get our wounding. That's when we get the fear. The wounding could be just being left out, being made fun of, being abandoned. Sometimes that wounding can happen if a parent dies, if there's a divorce, if there's some kind of trauma that happens, that wounds that innocent, pure love little child. And nobody gets out of childhood without wounding, because we don't have perfect parents or teachers or coaches. We're all doing the best we can, but that child gets wounded. And I believe our work on the planet is to use that wounding and transform it and use it for healing at the other lifetime 2, when our authentic, empowered self shows up.
That's a pretty big journey.
Yes, it is a very big journey. And, it's not my journey. It's the wisdom of all ages. I think that all the great religious leaders were trying to teach us the journey. I call it, you're moving from fear to love. You're moving from being run by your wounded child to being run by your authentic adult self. Another way of saying it is that I believe our mission here is to grow up.
Interesting, very interesting. And yet, some of the ancient wisdom tells us to be like little children again.
Mm-hmm. Be like children again is having that awe of life and that being very present in the moment. Children are not worried about tomorrow or yesterday. They're right here, right with you. So I do think there is wisdom in that. We must become as children in order to enter the kingdom of love.
So, Patty, how does a person do that work? How do they move through fear?
I will say that I have an outline in my book for people to follow, to really get clear of what their wounds are that they're carrying, and then do some grieving around those wounds, and then do some forgiveness around those wounds. I have people write down people that have hurt them and what did they say or do to hurt them, and write all that down. Write down the person that did that to you. And then one by one, those people come to you and validate you first, saying in your visualization, they say, I did do that to you. I am sorry. Will you forgive me? Now, sometimes you're ready to forgive that person, and sometimes you're not, because their wound was so egregious. Then you might have to say, no, I'm not ready. You'll have to come back. And it's okay to tell people to come back, and then go on to your next person. And if you're able to forgive them, then cross them off your list. And you're going to narrow it down to a few people that have kept you stuck. And we want to get unstuck so that they don't have power.
Absolutely. I think of the great American sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce, who channeled a series of universal laws. And his law of forgiveness was forgiveness heals and empowers the one who forgives. I've mentioned that before on the podcast because it's a really important perspective to be aware of, that it really sets you free from being bound to that perspective, that person, that experience. How can you step out of your fear if you're holding on to the pain?
Right. And not willing to look at it, not willing to talk about it. To me, the goal is to get better, to outgrow what happened to us, to understand it, and to move on beyond that. I think that there's a dragon in the path from lifetime 1 to lifetime 2, and that dragon is really a lie. And the lie that we all were given is, I'm not good enough. And the reality is, you are good enough. You are good enough to be an incomplete, imperfect human being, just like the rest of us, trying to figure out life the best we can. So we have to either put that dragon to sleep or slay that dragon and just don't believe it anymore. When that I'm not good enough, you can't do that shows up, you say, I don't believe that anymore. Leave me alone. Get out of my car. I'm in charge of my life.
Louise Hay had a suggestion for people to put on their bathroom mirror in like bright red lipstick, I am enough, so that every time you looked in the mirror, you brushed your teeth, that your unconscious would get this message that you are enough, because it is really one of the fundamental issues that humans need to resolve within themselves to kind of step into their spiritual self, right?
Well, I don't think you can do it without falling in love with yourself. I'll tell you a story. I have 2 children. One is 26 and one is 32. And the younger one, when he was 18, he had just turned 18, and he was a senior in high school, and he was laying down on the couch and he put a pillow over his head. I said, what's going on? He said, well, I'm kind of depressed. He said, when I turned 18, I thought I was going to be in second lifetime. I thought I was going to be my authentic adult self, and I would get rid of all the baggage you gave me and all the baggage Dad gave me. But instead, it's still here. And I said, oh, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, honey, but we all get baggage. And that is your baggage that you're going to have to work through in order to come into knowing your authentic self. And it's a process, and that's okay. It takes years to grow into our adult self where we really take charge of our life. Went to ACA meeting, Adult Children of Alcoholics, in my early 20s. My dad was an alcoholic, and because of that, I actually was able to transform what happened around the alcoholism, and it made me a better. And so that's an example of taking what happened, resolving it, transforming it, and then becoming part of the healing force of the world. In fact, when my dad died, my older brother called me and said, I wrote an obituary. What do you think of this? And they read it to me, and he said he was a mean son of a gun who hurt everybody that he ever encountered in his life. And I said, I don't think you can put that in the paper, honey. And so he went back and he redid it, and he wrote this brilliant obituary. For those of us who knew him well, we were forced to pull out a better self than had we not known him. And that's transforming what happened. It's coming to know there was a purpose for all of that stuff.
And it's not necessarily an easy journey.
Exactly. And I think all the great teachers, all the great faiths tried to teach us this. Jesus Christ tried to teach us this. Mohammed tried to teach it. Gandhi tried to teach it. Nelson Mandela tried to teach it. It's in 1 Corinthians 13. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I acted as a child. When I became a man or an adult, I put away my childish things. And then I saw partial, but now I see whole. And that's what we get in the second lifetime. It's so worth doing the work because now you see whole.
In this first lifetime, well, first of all, you're not talking about 2 actual lifetimes. You're talking about 2 cycles or 2 paths within your physical lifetime, correct?
Right. I'm not talking about reincarnation. I'm talking about we have the opportunity to live 2 lifetimes here on this planet, in this body. And the first is run by our wounded child, and the second is run by our empowered adult self. But same body.
And that first one is kind of mandatory before you get to the second one, but the second one isn't necessarily mandatory.
Right. Well, we have the opportunity to. Some people stay stuck in their first lifetime in their wounded child their whole life. I had a client come in, he was 80 years old, never been to therapy before. And he said, if I have 20 or 25 more years, I want to do it better than what I did the first 80 years.
I think maybe you just hit the nail on the head because it takes that willingness. I think, I work with energy and I help transform people's thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. And I tell people, you don't have to believe in the techniques that I use or any of that kind of woo-woo stuff, but you just need to be willing and open. You need to be looking for that shift to invite that transformation into your life. It sounds the very same in your work.
Yes, I'm not saying anything new. I'm just saying it in easy to understand words. 2 years ago, I had over 100 tumors in my brain. They were in all 8 lobes of my brain. And yet here I am. I had a stem cell transplant and I am cancer-free right now, knock on wood. They don't call you cured unless you have 5 years of scans behind you that are clear. And I have about 2 years, a little over 2 years of clear scans.
That's amazing. And congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I don't know if you know about stem cell transplants, but they give you shots to increase your stem cell production. And then they take all your blood out and put it through sort of like a dialysis machine, and they separate the stem cells from your blood. They put your blood back in and then hit you with really high dose chemo. And that whole process kills your white blood cells, your red blood cells, and your bone marrow. And when you don't think you're going to make it, that's when they put your stem cells back. And I said, okay, so when you put them back in after about 8 weeks, am I going to feel better right away? And they said, no, you're going to have to rebuild all of those cells that got killed. And so it took about a year to come back to full energy, full life. And I'm very grateful to be here.
You look at life differently when you have experiences like that. I know for myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely changes your perspective. And I think that shift in perspective is good for everyone, although I wish that everyone has an easier way to find that shift.
Right. They do. They can move from lifetime one to lifetime two. When I got out of the hospital, I had been in isolation, I don't know, 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And when I finally got out, this book, Two Lifetimes, had been bugging me and bugging me. Write the book because you don't have much time. Write the book. And so when I got out of the hospital, I wrote the book.
So there's a whole bunch here I want to talk about. First of all, it's like your book had its own consciousness, right? The morphogenic field was knocking at your door. And even that awareness or that knowingness that came through, you don't have much time. You could have taken that many different ways. You could have thought, okay, I'm not going to be on the earth much longer. I have to write this book. Or you could be, this book needs to be out now. I don't have much time to write it. It's, needs to be birthed now. How did you take it?
I think I took it both ways, personally and with this book. I felt I have another book, The Emotionally Unavailable Man, A Blueprint for Healing. And it's like these books come knocking and they won't let me go until I've written it all down. And so I knew this book has to be here now. And also at the other side, when they killed all my cells, I got an E. coli infection in my bloodstream because I didn't have any white blood cells to fight it. And so I didn't think I was going to make it through the night. And so there is a connection with our lifetime here is precious and short. We don't get 500 years. So, do the work you need to be doing now.
Now, if we go back to that book in that first lifetime, you mentioned that we pick up fear or all these wounds from our environment.
Mm-hmm.
What about our interpretation of the environment? Because some of our wounds definitely are real and justifiable on a conscious level. And sometimes it's that person's perspective of what happened that creates the story.
Absolutely. Children are very egocentric. If something goes wrong, it's my fault. If something goes right, it's my credit. It's all about me, that little child, me. And so they can interpret something that is not actually true. I'll give you an example. When I was 9 years old, a long time ago, when they didn't have permanent press sheets and you had to iron your sheets, that was my chore. My mom said, okay, you're old enough to do this. She took me down in the basement and got out the ironing board and showed me how to iron the wrinkles out and gave me a basket full of laundry to iron. And after a while, she came back down and she said, Patty, you're supposed to iron the wrinkles out. You are ironing the wrinkles in. And I remember thinking as a child, I am stupid. I can't even figure out how to iron a flat sheet. Now, when I got older, I was like, why was I left alone at 9 years old to iron? But it wounded me. And my mom was not saying, you're stupid. But that's what I got. That's what I took. And so those things, I call them ghost drivers. We have those little parts of ourselves that believe things, whether or not they're true. And we have to be willing to confront the truth of them and to really know that I'm not stupid, I'm really bright. You know, in our first lifetime, our child is handed a problem from the universe, and the child says, I don't know what to do. The same problem handed in second lifetime, our adult self says, I don't know what to do, but I'm really smart and I can figure it out.
Yeah, that second lifetime is about self-acceptance.
Yeah. And self-love, really coming to realize how magnificent you are. I would say one thing to your listeners. I would say, I need you to get to your own magnificence because it's there. A lot of people, the base is a lie that you're not good enough. That's the platform, that's the foundation, and it's a lie. So we have to get rid of that and really know that, no, wait a minute, I am bright, I am amazing. And as every human being is, that your journey is valuable and what you can contribute to the world is valuable.
Patty, before we close out, do you have a tip you could share with the listeners to help them foster more self-acceptance and more self-love?
I will say that it's critical that you do come to terms with who you authentically are, that you learn to say yes when the answer is yes, and you learn to say no when the answer is no, that you're willing to step toward scary things. And that's how we outgrow our fear. I have clients that say, oh, sure, I'm going to outgrow my fear. Yeah, right. And I'm like, yeah, right. That's what's going to happen, where you outgrow being run by the fear of getting it wrong or not being good enough or, something. And you just are true to your authentic self.
And that's the journey we're all on.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Patty, would you share your contact information, your website, your book once again?
Sure. My website is patty-henry.com. If you go to my website, you can email me from there. If you decide to get a book, Two Lifetimes, the easiest way to get it is Amazon. I would love to hear from anybody who has questions or comments. That's great. I'm available.
Wonderful. Patty, thank you for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you for having me, really. And continue to do the good work you're doing. I just love it.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate that. And thank you for listening to this week's edition of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. I appreciate you as well. Remember to check out all of our episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Come and visit me at thoughtchange.com and learn what energy medicine can do for you. Remember to subscribe if you enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.